The greatest libel in modern history is that America is a racist society. America is, in fact, the least racist society that has had multiple races in the history of humanity. So this racist society elected the only white society in history to elect a non-white leader. Barack Obama, twice, by the way. But here is an interesting challenge. If America is so racist, why have 2 million black Africans moved to the United States in the last 50 years? Are these people stupid? Would you move to a place that hated you? I'm a Jew. Would I move to Iran? Iran is systemically anti-Semitic. Would I move to Iran? If I did, I would be a suicidal fool. Blacks moved to the United States in vast numbers. 306,000 blacks came to America as slaves. 2 million blacks came to America from Africa as free people voluntarily. You think that's taught at any school in the United States of America? For most blacks, you are very lucky to be in America. If you're walking around angry at America, you are displacing anger that you may have, for whatever reason, onto the United States, which doesn't deserve it. This country is a blessing for blacks who want to use it for a blessing. Ask the black Africans who've moved here.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dennis Prager, the American broadcaster, author, and political commentator. You have been a radio talk show host for 40 years and consistently speak out against threats to our democracy from the left, the damaging influence of mainstream media, and challenges to American ideals. You launched PragerU in 2009 to create short-form videos that distill ideas on philosophy, economics, and American values. Your guest speakers include Jordan Peterson, Candace Owens, Steve Forbes, and Ben Shapiro. To date, PragerU has received over 3.5 billion views, with over 1 billion in the last year alone. You regularly appear on television for Fox, CBS, and NBC to discuss your uncompromising views on politics, religion, and liberty. Dennis, welcome to London Real.
That was nice. Well done. It's good to be with you.
It's great to have you here. Before we get started, I just want to tell everyone that we are streaming now on our brand new Digital Freedom platform, which is a censorship-free, independent broadcasting system that is of the people, by the people, for the people, and available exclusively on our website at freedomplatform.tv. Can everybody watching this now please share this link via the sidebar to any and all of your social media channels? Let me just repeat that. And everybody watching, please share this link via the sidebar to all your social media channels. This is important. As I always say, just ask your friends and family to give us 15 minutes and then they can decide. Dennis, I pledge to you and everyone watching us that none of this conversation will be edited, censored, removed, or banned, and that anyone in the world can watch the full version of this episode free at freedomplatform.tv/Prager. Thanks to the generous donations of over 33,000 people around the world, we affectionately call the London Real Army. For anybody wanting to become a founding member of the Digital Freedom Platform, they can visit freedomplatform.tv/give to donate and fight with us on the front lines to protect our human rights. Here at London Real, we've been a platform for free speech since 2011. And Dennis, I'm super excited to have you here today. Maybe we start and talk a little bit about censorship. It's something you're no stranger to. I know you had your own beef with YouTube in 2017. You know, to be honest, Dennis, for 9 years, I broadcasted conversations here in this studio with no problem. But on April 6th, I became persona non grata with YouTube and almost lost my entire channel, 8,000 videos, 250 million views. And I've had to kind of play nice just to stay on that platform. What are your thoughts on censorship, YouTube, and what's been happening in these last few months?
I have been a student of the left since graduate school at Columbia University. I was at the Russian Institute, and my field of study, which it's funny, when communism collapsed in the Soviet Union and East Europe, I thought, oh boy, am I lucky I didn't go into this field, because it would be pretty much a non-field. But it was called Communist Affairs. I studied under Brzezinski, who became National Security Advisor to Jimmy Carter. I read Pravda every day. I didn't think that knowing the left so well would unfortunately equip me to understand what's happening in America and the rest of the West, but especially the English-speaking countries. For whatever reason, I don't know, but it's just the case. And it did. It equipped me to understand it. So the first thing that people need to understand is the left is always against free speech. There is no exception since Lenin. No exception. Liberals are pro-free speech. I draw a distinction between liberal and left. Liberals vote left because they're foolish and cowardly, but they are not leftists. Liberals believe in free speech, leftists do not. And this is par for the course. What they are doing at universities to shut down conservative speakers, what they are doing at YouTube and Google, which is owned by, which owns YouTube, and Twitter, and so on. This is all normative on the left. They do not debate, they shut down. So that's what's happening in a nutshell.
Dennis, when you say the left, how would you define that even further? Is that Marxists? Because you made a great separation between liberals and left, and I appreciate that. Maybe we go even deeper on that. But how do you describe the left? Because it's a term I hear you use a lot. Candace uses it a lot. But how would you articulate for someone that doesn't know exactly what that means?
The left is known by its positions. The truth is the left does not have a philosophy of life. The left, and this it took me a lifetime to realize, if you say, what do you stand for? I mean, they'll say equality, justice, social justice. It's all pablum. So what they really stand for is chaos. And it took me literally a lifetime to realize that. That's why it's so hard to define the left. I know what liberals stand for. I know what conservatives stand for. But what the left stands for is really to tear down. That's all the left has ever known to do. And it does it. It tears down. I just played on my radio show in America today, a councilwoman in Seattle, of the City Council of Seattle. We want to tear down all of this system of oppression, and we will have a new America. And that's what it is. It's always, look, Barack Obama said it 5 days before he was elected in 2008. I played this on my show, his entire 8 years in office. We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. That's what they know how to do, is fundamentally transform. Look, one of the great examples, this is the key to chaos. A biological male can compete in a race against a biological, a biological female. That's chaos. There's no common sense. There's no even idealism behind it. I have a male body, and I can. So in Connecticut, the U.S. state of Connecticut, almost every high school record in track is owned by a transgender female. In other words, a biological male who is cheating. This is called cheating. It's like taking steroids. It's cheating. If you can't call that cheating, you're a leftist. Liberals understand it's cheating. Leftists think it's noble. Tearing down a male-female distinction, they announce men menstruate. That's chaos. So 10 years ago, if you would have said to a leftist, do men menstruate? They would have thought you're out of your mind. But as soon as it becomes a policy, by golly, then the chaos reigns. So they want to destroy. That's all that I could say that's definite.
Okay, so they want to tear down everything that currently exists and put up something else because it's wrong, so we have to tear it down. And that's what we see them doing now. What percentage of Americans are actually on the left? Is it a tiny minority that's controlling the conversation?
Look, the truth is, the more people graduate college, the more you will have, because now high school as well. Schools are no longer education centers, they're indoctrination centers. I would not send my kid to a school today in America. I would homeschool my child, or if I found a religious school that did not develop leftism as its core, I would send them there. But this is the tragedy. So the more people who graduate college, or even now high school, the more leftists you will have, and the more secular. This is a big factor that secular conservatives do not like to acknowledge, and that is that the death of Christianity, and I'm a Jew saying this, the death of Christianity has made this possible. That's why they hate Christianity. That's why they hate Christmas. That's why they hate saying Merry Christmas. I mean, they mock us for pointing this out. Oh, war on Christmas, the right made it up. Of course, we didn't make it up. You can't have a Christmas party at your business anymore. It has to be a holiday party. Just saying anything that's Christian. They hated when in the Pledge of Allegiance of the United States in the 1950s, they added the words under God, one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. They hate the fact that it's under God. So that's a big, big factor as well, because the only organized opposition to leftism is organized religion. Right.
Okay, and I want to talk about that a little bit more, because I know you said that was one of the principal structures that the U.S. was founded on, knowing that religion was there. And I want to get to that. Just the censorship, to kind of wrap that up. You obviously in 2017 got censored by YouTube. What do you see now with the censorship? Has it changed at all? Has it become even more extreme? And is there any way around this? I've also heard you say, look, at some point you have to kind of play ball, because that's where all the views are, these major social platforms.
Well, no, I don't think a matter of playing ball. I testified in the U.S. Senate last year against Google. You'll love this, and your viewers can see this. It's on, at least till it's taken down. It's on YouTube. I was testifying, and I noted that Prager University, which is what they've been tampering with, which has 1 billion views a year, which is very large. And they put about 100 of our 400 5-minute videos, they put about 100 of them on the restricted list, meaning that if you filter out pornography, and violence, you will not be able to see excuse me, those videos. One of the videos that they put on the restricted list is I personally, I do only 1/10 of the videos do I give. 90% are given by others. But among my 10% is a series on the 10 Commandments. And one of them, obviously, is thou shalt not murder. That's on the restricted list. So Senator Ted Cruz of Texas asked the Google representative in the U.S. Senate, obviously I was there, why did you censor Mr. Prager's video on the 10 Commandments? And he said, because it mentions murder. So it's surreal. We're talking a surreal thing here. So when I gave my comments. I said, well, we will now make a Google-friendly 10 Commandments and drop the 6th commandment.
I've seen that video. I think you got a laugh on that one from someone.
Yeah, we did. I got a laugh on that one, yeah.
All right, so it shows how preposterous that has become.
That's right.
I mean, I've come up against quote-unquote community guidelines that are subjectively enforced. They don't even know what's in there. I mean, I spoke with my YouTube rep 24 hours after we were banned and deleted, second largest YouTube live stream in the world on April 6th. And he said it violated the community standards on COVID. And I said, how long have they been in place? He said, over 6 months. And I said, say that again. Over 6 months about COVID? And he said, oh, well, no, I guess not. Well, I'll have to check. So you don't know. And again, these conversations.
I'm just curious. I know you're asking me questions, but I'll ask you a question.
Yeah.
What did you say that violated their COVID guideline?
They claimed that my guest was a quote unquote COVID-19 denier. And first of all, I thought the language was quite convenient because it sounds like a Holocaust denier.
Yeah, I know. That's what they've always done. But what are they even referring to? What did your guest say?
He was questioning the testing on COVID-19. This was very early on. And he said the CTR test was unreliable and false positives and false negatives. He also brought up 5G. God forbid you talk about that when it comes to COVID, that it might lower the immune system. And that was enough for them to completely lose it. I said he wasn't a denier. I said that's a clickbait headline of what he said. What he said was nuanced. He said it over about 20 minutes and he really explained the DNA and the RNA, but it wasn't enough. And this is before we ever started using the V word, vaccines. When we even got near that, it was impossible.
You know, these people have such contempt for the church and Galileo. Galileo thought that the earth revolved around the sun, which was considered preposterous by many people at that time. What is considered preposterous at any time may in fact end up being what is true. But the answer to preposterous speech is non-preposterous speech, not suppression. This is new in the West, especially in America, which there was one thing that has never been compromised, and that is free speech. That was sacrosanct in American history, left and right, or I should say liberal and conservative. And now the cancel culture, as it is called, these are new phenomena in American life. It's a real existential battle between America and the left. One of them will survive, not both.
And these tech companies are hiding behind the fact that they're private companies. You know, they have their community standards. Right. They can't be regulated. There's arguments you could say they're public utilities and they need to follow the laws of the land, but that has to be determined in court. And as you know, that takes time and money, and to be continued on that. Right. Dennis, maybe you can tell us what's been going on in America the past 3 months. We're over here in England and we're watching the riots. We're watching the protests. Sometimes it's hard to know when one stops and the other begins. There's a lot of things I want to talk to you about today, but maybe we start there. What is going on from your perspective when we see these things?
The left has first of all perpetrated. I wrote this years ago. One could see it on obviously on the internet. One is free to check my columns. I wrote that the greatest libel in modern history is that America is a racist society. America is, in fact, the least racist society that has had multiple races in the history of humanity. And I wrote, because I taught Jewish history at college in the U.S., at the university, and I've written a book on anti-Semitism. So I know a lot about the subject. There was such a thing called the blood libel. And that is the most famous libel in history. It was for hundreds of years, Jews were accused of killing Christian children to use their blood to bake matzahs, the unleavened bread for Passover. I mean, it was 100% lie. 100%. Of course, no Jew ever did it, but you're not even allowed to eat animal blood, according to Jewish law, let alone human blood. So anyway, libel became a famous thing because of the blood libel. This is almost on that par of libel, that America is a racist society. America, as I said, is the least racist society where multiple races have lived. So this racist society elected the only white society in history to elect a non-white leader, and Barack Obama, twice, by the way. I believe that Obama got more white votes than Trump did. I'm almost certain about that. That is this racist country. But here is an interesting challenge. If America is so racist, why have 2 million black Africans moved to the United States in the last 50 years? Are these people stupid? Would you move to a place that hated you? I'm a Jew. Would I move to Iran? Iran is systemically anti-Semitic. Would I move to Iran? If I did, I would be a suicidal fool. Blacks moved to the United States in vast numbers. And by the way, this is another fascinating statistic. 306,000 blacks came to America as slaves. 2 million blacks came to America from Africa as free people voluntarily. You think that's taught at any school in the United States of America? Anyway, that's one fantastic argument against the country being racist. Here's another one. My column this week on the number of hoaxes. There are so many race hoaxes in America. Jussie Smollett in Chicago is the most famous. But I list 15, and I didn't have enough space in one column to list more. Now, again, why would people make up racist hoaxes if America is so racist? Why do you keep having to make up noose stories? Oh, a hanging noose. Oh, that's racist. Or the N-word on a black kid's dormitory room at a university. But they're almost all made up, usually by blacks, trying to blame whites for racism. Why would that be if there's so much racism? This country is a blessing to blacks. There's a book called Out of America. Keith Richburg, a black Washington Post reporter. And he concluded after 2 years of being the Washington Post chief correspondent in Africa, how lucky he is that his ancestors, although they were horribly unlucky, he is very lucky as the beneficiary of their having been vilely transported to America because he's an American, and it's so much luckier for him than it would be had he stayed in Africa.
What's the reaction you get when you make these bold statements, Dennis, to a public that is getting a completely different narrative pretty much everywhere?
Well, that's a very important question. Obviously, on my radio show, I continue to be hired, so they must be happy with me. But a very interesting statistic that I just learned yesterday, Prager University gets 1 billion views a year, and yet the last 2 months is the highest number per month in the history of Prager University. It's gone up 25%. There is also a thirst to hear the other side at least, and the truth at best. And we try to provide both, the other side and truth. A lot of Americans looking at these riots and watching the police do nothing saw that it is easy to take civilization down. There are a lot of stupid people in my country, as in every country, but not everybody is stupid. And you have to be stupid not to fear when people burn police cars, loot en masse on camera from stores, and nothing happens to them. That, even the liberal understands, is chaos.
Yeah, it's hard to watch over here sometimes. It is. What do you say to blacks or anybody who saw what happened to George Floyd and say, Dennis, this is just another example of systemic racism in the police force, et cetera?
Well, it depends. If the person is interested in truth, I have a great answer. If they're not, then I just wish them a good day. So if you're interested in truth, here are some truths. According to the Washington Post, using federal U.S. data, the number of unarmed blacks killed by police in all of America in all of 2018 was, depending on how you count it, was it either something like 11 or 12 or 20. I mean, it's some ridiculously, or not ridiculously, some incredibly small number. Obviously, in virtually every case there, they were unarmed, but it's not that they weren't attacking a policeman, like Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. And by the way, it was, and 10 more, whatever the number is, 10 more unarmed whites were killed by police than blacks. So this notion of systemic racism, at least with lethality, I can't speak to cars being stopped, okay? But George Floyd's car wasn't stopped. George Floyd was killed. Secondly, we have no idea that the policeman in Minneapolis was a racist, or at least killed the man because he was right. We don't even know if he intended to kill the man. The man had a lot of pre-existing conditions. You don't lose your breath when a knee is on the side of your throat. It would be if it was in the front of your throat. I'm not defending the policeman. It looked to me barbaric. But that this is indicative of some war on blacks by police is another gigantic lie.
Talk to me about the Black Lives Matter movement, because that's been everywhere. And yet we're also hearing that there are some very strange fundraising components to that. And then we've seen corporates kind of jump on the bandwagon. And again, I got to watch it all from the UK. And again, it's almost strange to watch. It's stranger than fiction. The riots, like you said, the burning of police cars, the police retreating, the protests being allowed, and then corporations opting into this movement. Well,
corporations are composed of cowards. To be the head of a big corporation, Nike, or Amazon, or any of the others, I think cowardice, obsequiousness is a necessary qualification. They put their finger up wherever the winds are blowing, that's the position that they take. Boeing, I just read this on my show today, Boeing Aircraft Company just let a man go, its chief spokesman, 33 years ago, in his 20s, as a naval airman. He wrote a piece against women in the armed forces. It was a big debate at that time. He has had to leave Boeing because of the article from 33 years ago, arguing as a member of the armed forces against women in the armed forces. Why didn't Boeing just say, the guy wrote this 33 years ago, he no longer holds that opinion, end of issue? Or may I say, I mean, this of course is inconceivable. This would be heaven. That's his opinion. You're allowed to have differing opinions at the Boeing company. Have a great day. But they could have said, that's 33 years ago. He's a great man. He served America. He serves Boeing. He doesn't hold that position anymore. Bye-bye. But no, bye-bye to him. This is corporate culture today. And Lenin is reputed to have said, nobody knows if he actually said it, but it's so true, it doesn't matter really. And that is that Western companies will compete with one another to sell us the rope with which we will hang them. That's what they're doing. Black Lives Matter hates capitalism. They have contempt for corporations. and yet they're doing everything they can. It's flooded with money, Black Lives Matter, flooded, hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's a hate America organization.
Where's that money coming
It
from?
certainly is not a Love Black Lives organization, because the only Black lives it cares about in its slogan are those who were killed by whites. And since almost no whites kill blacks, it is white officers. That's the entirety of its concern with Black lives. Were you killed by a white policeman?
Right, because you're alluding to a statistic of black on black crime that they obviously don't talk about and don't care about. And if Black lives actually mattered, they would address that because it's the biggest percentage of Black's lives ending.
Right.
Okay, where's this money coming from, Dennis?
I'm sorry?
Where's the money coming from that goes into Black Lives Matter?
Well, the Rockefeller Foundation, I believe it was, alone gave $100 million. The left has taken over the biggest charities, and the corporations are scared of the left or run by leftists, and they just ply them with money. It's really protection money. It's a protection racket. We won't be attacked as racist. Here's a bunch of money.
And we saw corporations fork over chunks, like Cisco gave them $5 million, and Airbnb cut him a check, and there was a lot of big donations.
Right, which is remarkable given that they're not shy about telling you capitalism is evil. So if Black Lives Matter had its way, all these people giving them millions of dollars would no longer exist. It's Orwellian.
Let me ask you a question, Dennis. If I'm Black and I'm in America and I feel angry by everything I'm seeing in the media, whether it's right or wrong, and I see these people that are protesting and they say Black Lives Matter, which sounds right to me, what should I do? Should I learn more about it? Should I find another way to protest? Should I educate myself? Like, I'm sure you have empathy towards the people that are out there as a part of this, but maybe don't really know what's going on.
Well, I have I have a lot of responses to that. Number one, empathy is extremely difficult. Sympathy is very, very possible. We use the word empathy, but the truth is, it's almost impossible to empathize with another. I'll give you an example, having nothing to do with race. I spoke to a man who lost his son in a car crash. His son was 20 years old. He was devastated. He was truly devastated. He was inconsolable. He said, I went to therapy, had no help. I went back, he was a Jew. I went back to synagogue, no help. Religion didn't help. Therapy didn't help. My friends didn't help. My family didn't help. So, of course, I said, did anything help? He said, yes, something did. And I said, what was that? Meeting with other parents who lost their children. And it really awakened me to the fact that I have tremendous sympathy for someone who lost a child, but I can't have empathy. It's not possible. I can imagine the pain, but I haven't had it. So I'm just giving you a philosophical take on your question, which may be well beyond what was necessary. But so if you mean sympathy, which is what you meant, I constantly tell, I have a lot of Black listeners, and the Blacks are to the Democratic Party what workers were to the Communist Party, a group to be used for power. The Democrats care about Blacks as much as I care about basket weaving in Thailand. And I wrote a piece on that people could see on the internet. I write a column every week. I have 1,000 of my columns on the internet, and I wrote, the left doesn't give a damn about Blacks, which is a fact. Feminists don't give a damn about women. The proof is they don't defend the girls who are being defeated in all these races against males who identify as females. They're leftists with all of these groups, but they use a a theoretically maligned minority, although women are a majority, they use them as their vehicle for power. For most blacks, you are very lucky to be an American. If you're walking around angry at America, you are displacing anger that you may have for whatever reason onto the United States, which doesn't deserve it. It deserved it when there was slavery. It deserved it during Jim Crow, the segregation laws, but it does not deserve it now, and it hasn't deserved it for a generation. This country is a blessing for blacks who want to use it for a blessing. Ask the black Africans who've moved here.
Okay. Talk to me about monuments being pulled down, this whole debate. What do you see there? What do we need to be?
Well, there are two separate ones. It's the Confederate statues and non-Confederate. I have some sympathy, but only legally, not tearing down. If people want to vote, do you take down this Confederate general from a statue in Mississippi? Okay. If the majority of the state votes for it, I support it. That's fine. But Robert E. Lee, the general who led the Confederate Army, is a very complex question. Robert E. Lee prevented a lot of Americans from dying after the Civil War because he told the South, lay down your arms, this is over. He did a great service to the country after leading the terrible cause of the Confederacy, acknowledged. But otherwise, that's one thing. But the president was right, and he was mocked by the media, needless to say. The president could say, it's cold outside, he'll be mocked. And he said, where will this end? Jefferson, Washington? And they mocked him. What, people are going to tear down Jefferson or Washington monuments? And of course they are. They're because which is symbolic. They want to tear down America.
Right.
Now, just for a moment, let me just say the notion that if somebody owned slaves in the 19th century or 18th century, in the case of Washington, then we judge them today. Slavery was universal. So you could not have a monument to just about anybody from earlier than the 19th century. Certainly not a black African, not an Arab. I mean, the Arab slave trade was enormous. The word for black person in Arabic, abid, means slave. That's how widespread it was. And by the way, they castrated their slaves so that they couldn't reproduce. Americans did not castrate their slaves, and they reproduced massively, and often, not always, had a family life. This is not to tell you slavery is good. Slavery is pure evil, but there are gradations of evil. Only a fool denies there are gradations of good and there are gradations of evil. Anyway, the only question that an intelligent or an honest person asks is not what society had slavery. It's what society abolished slavery. That's the only important question.
Do you think people even know the history behind these monuments when they tear them down?
To tear down Ulysses Grant suppressed the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. Ulysses Grant loathed slavery. He led the army that sacrificed itself to end slavery. And taking down Ulysses Grant, I mean, it's unbelievable. But everything is taken because they just want to destroy America. So no statue is good. They asked them to name a statue you would leave alone. They could not answer your question.
You've talked about these kind of microaggressions and this whole racism dialogue that even goes on in the universities, and I know University of California has it. I mean, this is all part of this narrative that you think is just a big lie that's been sold to the country to get the left to be able to control people by just saying this is all happening and we need to hate ourselves for it and then tear things down to remedy it.
Microaggressions is one of my 4 proofs of how little racism there is in America. Microaggressions was invented as a way of saying, oh, think of all the things whites say that are really racist, but they deny it. There is so little pure racism in American speech about blacks that they have made up. They've had to make up, like they make up a hoax. Microaggressions is another hoax. Again, all of this is available on the internet. Type in University of California list of microaggressions. So here is an example of a racist statement that is commonly made, but which the University of California and the entire left says is really racist. If somebody says there is only one race, the human race, that is now considered racist. That's a microaggression. That is one of the most beautiful sentiments a human can have. There's only one race, the human race. And the left declares it racist because we really don't say racist things anymore. So they've had to make up this stuff. That's my second proof about how little racism there is in America.
Have you had anybody try to debate you on a lot of these points?
Okay, so here's another very famous rule. The left never debates. They smear. That's why they shut down speakers or try to shut down speakers like me, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Heather McDonald, who come to their campus because they know they can't win a debate. In their gut, they know that. So they have to call us what I invented years ago, 6-herb, sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, bigoted. You don't debate a conservative, you smear him or her. There are many of them that are hers. That's what they do. So they won't. We invite on my radio show, which is heard around America, we invite people on the left, and 99% of the time they say no or don't respond. I met Thomas Friedman of the New York Times. I bumped into him at Washington, D.C. Dulles Airport a few years ago. I don't think he knew who I was. And but I said to him, Tom Friedman, I'm just curious, would you go on a radio talk show? And he goes, nah, I don't do radio. And sure enough, the next week he was on National Public Radio, which is the left-wing version of talk radio. But he would never go on a regular talk show because we're conservative.
So they don't debate.
I would love to debate Thomas Friedman. I would pay him to debate me.
So they don't debate, they censor or they cancel as well. Talk to me about
smearing is a very important part of it.
Okay. Tell me about cancel culture. We obviously saw this piece that came out in Harper's, a bit of a pushback to this cancel culture that also seems to have been already smeared in the last 24 hours. But it was J.K. Rowling and even people, you might say on the left, like Noam Chomsky and other people signing this thing that said, I think in effect, this had gone a bit too far. I don't know. What do you make of that and the cancel culture?
I didn't see this. I'm very curious about it. Chomsky signed it?
It was like 135 people from apparently left and right and black and white that basically signed a letter saying that this has gone too far. We're canceling people. And I think one of the best examples was the J.K. Rowling, her coming out and making these statements. And as opposed to having a talk about it or a debate about it, people are getting canceled.
Boycott her work. Yeah, boycott Harry Potter. Yeah, she came across a statement. What is it? People who menstruate. And she said, it's just the word for people who menstruate is women. And for that, she has been called a hater. To say that women menstruate and men don't is...
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website, londonreal.tv, or click the link in the description below.